Okay, this is lesson number 7 for Algebra 1. Today we're talking about the quadratic formula and using that to solve quadratic equations. So this is section 9.5 of the book. We're going to do 2 weeks on quadratic formula, just like we did 2 weeks on the previous sections of the book. So main learning target here is we're going to use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations and just get used to working with that quadratic formula. Okay. So first, what is the quadratic formula? So if you remember, doing the problems from the last couple weeks, we were doing those complete square things. They were all kind of similar, right? You have your x squared, something x plus blank minus blank, take half of that something x, square it, add that, subtract it. It's the same general steps, just the numbers were different. So basically, if you have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you can have some general equation where you've got numbers for a, b, and c, doesn't matter what they are, and you do all those steps divide out that whatever this number is, whatever, complete square, solve, so on and so forth. Every time your answer is going to be x equals negative b over 2a plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, or x equals negative b over 2a minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is one way of writing the quadratic formula. But you'll notice these are the same. The only difference is a plus and a minus. So what we can do is we can combine these into one big fraction to get a quadratic formula, which I'm going to put over here in pink. This is the quadratic formula. It's written on your assignment already, but it might be nice to write it down just to get used to it. And it's the solution to ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by big fraction 2 times a. Okay, so anytime you get an equation like this, some number times x squared plus some number times x plus some number equals 0, you can just say what's the a number, b number, and c number, and just replace them in this quadratic formula, simplify it, do the algebra, boom, you'll get your 2 answers from that plus or minus. Okay, and this will always give you your solutions. Every time, that's the awesome part. But it's always got to come from that. So before we actually start working with solving equations here, what we're going to do is we're just going to get a little bit of practice with evaluating using the quadratic formula. So I'm going to give you an a value, b value, c value. This is problems 1, 2, and 3. And you're going to just replace, simplify, give me the answers. All right, so problem 1, this is problem 1 on your assignment. You have a equals negative 2, b equals negative 3, and c equals 5. Now, I would like you to try to work through these steps by first trying it without the calculator and then checking each step with your calculator. Right? I mean, you can use a calculator on it, but try to push your brain a little bit. So here we've got our a, our b, and our c value. We've got our quadratic formula. So what we're going to do is we're just going to replace the a's with negative 2. We're going to replace the b's with negative 3. And we're going to replace the c with a 5. So here we get x equals negative b. So it's negative 3. And you can think of this negative b as the opposite. Switch the sign on that. So negative 3, which would just be positive 3, plus or minus the square root. And basically, anytime we're replacing this, we're going to put a parentheses around. So it's going to be parenthesis negative 3 squared minus 4 parenthesis. Instead of a, we're going to put in negative 2, so times negative 2. And then parenthesis, instead of c, we're going to put in 5. So that's our numerator. That's the top of the quadratic formula. And now we're going to put in the denominator. So we're going to say 2 instead of times a. The a number is negative 2, so put a negative 2 in there. So we've substituted in all the numbers for a, b, and c. Cool, so now we just got to go about simplifying. So we've got negative 3, that's just a positive 3. So x equals 3 plus or minus the square root. Negative 3 squared, with those parentheses, we're taking negative 3 times negative 3. This is always going to be a positive number that we get when we square it. So it'll always be positive here. 9. If you ever get a negative here, you goofed and probably put like negative 3 squared in the calculator without the parentheses. They gave you the wrong answer. So make sure that this negative 3 times negative 3 gives you a positive 9. And then here, I'm just going to look at this and I'm going to think, all right, negative 4 times negative 2. I'm looking at this minus as a negative. Negative 4 times negative 2 times 5. That's 8. Times 5, that's 40. Now that's a positive 40, so that's going to be a plus 40. Because what I did is I looked at this minus as a negative. If this turned out to be like a negative number, it'd be minus that number. Okay. All right, so here I have 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 40. All over 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. I'm just going to do a quick little simplify here. 3 plus or minus the square root. We know 40 plus 9 is 49, so I'm going to go 49 right there over negative 4. All right, cool. So this is much more simple than that, but we're not done yet. What we want to do is we're going to square root that 49. So remember, square root is not divide by 2. It's saying what number times itself gives us 49. So here I get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 49 is 7. So we're going to go 7 over negative 4. Okay. So now we're just going to go to two parts, the plus and the minus. So we're going to break it into one here. 3 plus 7 divided by 4, and 3 minus 7 divided by 4. We're doing that plus and minus part. And we're not dividing by 4 yet. We're going to add, subtract, and then divide by 4. And our answers might stay as fractions, and that's okay. We can leave them as fractions. All right, so here it's 3 plus 7, which is 10 over 4. We can simplify that to 5 over 2, right? Because this is 2 times 5, this is 2 times 2, or divide top and bottom by 2. And then here, 3 minus 7 is negative 4 over 4, which is negative 1. So our answers are x equals 5 over 2, or x equals negative 1. All right, so go ahead, try problems 2 and 3. Same way, you just replace a, b, and c with the numbers here. Right, the values given, and then just simplify. Use a calculator, check your work, but try it without the calculator first. So do the step, check it with the calculator, do a step, check it with the calculator. Awesome, okay. So now we're gonna move on. Pause the video, do problems 2 and 3, and then restart the video for problems 4 and 5, which are gonna be examples here. Okay. So problem 4, we have 3x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals negative 8. So notice the quadratic formula is the solutions to this equation. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Here we have something, 3x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals negative 8. Negative 8 is not 0. So step 1, and I want you to write down these steps on your paper. Step 1 is make it equal 0. Because we need it to equal 0 in order to use our quadratic formula. So we're going to go, well, that's a minus 8. Or negative 8, in order to make it a 0, we gotta go plus 8. We're gonna add 8 to both sides. So here we have 3x squared plus 5x plus 2 equals 0. Wonderful! We've got something, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So now we move on to step 2. Step 2 is we're gonna say what are, or identify, a, b, and C. We're gonna, what's the A number, what's the B number, what's the C number? And basically we're going to turn this into a problem that's like problems 1, 2, and 3 from this assignment. We're going to say, oh, hey, that number is 3. A equals 3. That number is 5. B equals 5. That number is 2. C equals 2. Right, and the order doesn't necessarily matter. We could rewrite this like 5x plus 3x squared. The A is the coefficient of the number in front of the x squared. The B is the coefficient or the number in front of the x. And the C is the number that doesn't have an x with it. It's the constant term. Doesn't have an x. Okay, so we've got our A, B, and C. Now, step 3 is we're going to use the quadratic formula. So we're just going to replace A, B, and C into the quadratic formula. So here we have x equals -5. Instead of negative b, it's -5, plus or minus the square root of 5 squared, because that's our b number, minus 4 times our a number, which is 3, times our c number, which is 2, all divided by 2 times our a number, which is 3. Okay, so now we just have to go about simplifying, right? So step 4 is simplify / evaluate the quadratic formula. So we're just going to go about simplifying this, right? We got our A, B, and C. We use the quadratic formula. Now we got to simplify it, evaluate it, figure out what x is equal to, and then we're going to write our answers. So here we get x equals -5 plus or minus square root. We're going to deal with this. This in here is called the discriminant. Basically, it's going to tell us how many solutions that we're going to get. We're going to get more into that next week. So here, 5 squared is 25. And then here I have -4 times 3 times 2. So it's like a -4 times 3 times 2. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So it's a negative minus, just a minus 24 there. And then here, divided by 6. Wonderful. So now x equals, and this right here, this is -5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 24 is 1 over 6. So -5 plus or minus square root of 1 is just 1. Because 1 times 1 is 1. So 1 over 6. And then we're going to break it into the two pieces. So we've got our -5 plus 1 divided by 6. And our -5 minus 1 divided by 6. We've got to be careful with our negatives here and how we're combining them. So -5 plus 1 is -6. -4. -4 over 6. Not double negative, just a single negative. Which is, we simplify that, right? Divide top and bottom by 2, or this is 2 times 2, that's 3 times 2. So -2 over 3. Here, this is -6 over 6, which is just because -5 minus 1 is -6. Which is just -1. And that's it. That's it. Those are our two answers. So here are answers, or solutions, Either x equals -2/3 or x equals -1. Those are the solutions to that equation. Okay, so that's problem 4. I'm going to do problem 5, and then I'm going to let you do 6, 7, 8. That's what you're going to be turning in. And make sure you're turning in all of these problems with your assignment. Okay. Oh, sorry, step 5. Step 5, we're going to write out answers separately. Okay, so we got 2 answers there, right? You could just have one answer, like one solution. You could have no solutions. And these ones, at least for this week, we're going to do 2 solutions. Okay. All right, so let's look at problem 5 now. What I want you to do is I want you to try problem 5 on your own. So go ahead, pause the video, try problem 5, like give it a shot, write it out, and then watch me do it here and check your work. See if you made a mistake, where you goofed, that sort of thing. If you did it perfect, awesome. And then that way you'll have kind of some feedback on like you trying a problem, seeing it done. So when you do problem 6, 7, and 8, right, you're good to go. Like you'll have seen that already. Okay, so go ahead and pause it, try problem 5, here we go with problem 5. And we're going to use these same steps for problem 5. So here we have x squared minus 10x minus 8 equals 3. So in order to solve this, we got to go step 1, we got to make it equal 0. This equation is equal to 3 on the right hand side, so we need to make that 0. So we're just going to subtract 3 on each side. So minus 3 minus 3. So now we have x squared minus 10x minus 11 equals 0. Some of you who remember stuff from, or some of the content from like chapter 7 and what we've done in previous lessons, you're like, hey, we could factor that really easily and solve it by factoring, but the learning target here is solving using the quadratic formula. This week we're using equations that have fairly simple answers for their numbers. Next week we're going to get into more challenging ones, and the quadratic formula is most useful when the numbers aren't nice. Here we're just using it with nice numbers. So we're still using quadratic formula, even though in this case it's not the most efficient use, or the most efficient way to do it. Okay, so we've got it equal to 0. Now we're going to identify a, b, and c. So here it's just x squared. So we need to know, hey, what's the a value? Well, how many x squareds do we have right here? We have one of them. Remember, anytime you have just the variable written there without a coefficient in front of it, it's like having 1. So here, a equals 1. And then b equals, here it's going to be negative 10. b equals negative 10, and then c equals negative 11. Fantastic. All right, so 1, negative 10, negative 11. We've identified a, b, and c. Now we're going to use the quadratic formula. We're going to replace a, b, and c in the quadratic formula. So we're going to get x equals negative 10. All right, so it's negative b, and we have a negative 10. And remember, a negative and a negative make a positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write positive 10. This is the opposite of whatever the b value is. So I'm just going to put a 10 here. 10 plus or minus the square root, parenthesis negative 10 squared. And when we square that, we're going to get a positive number, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 11. And then all divided by 2 times a, which is just 2 times 1, because a is 1. All right, so now we're going to go about simplifying the quadratic formula. Simplify slash evaluate what we get here. So here we got x equals 10 plus or minus the square root of positive 100, because negative 10 times negative 10 is 100. And then here I've got negative 4 times 1 times negative 11. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 11 is a positive plus 44. So just always look at that. Get your answer. If it's positive, it's plus. If it's negative, it's minus. And we're using that minus as a negative with our multiplication. And then divide by 2. We're going to simplify in here just to get 10 plus or minus the square root of 144 over 2. Awesome. So we're still simplifying. Now we have x equals 10 plus or minus. Here, the square root of 144, that's 12, right? And you can use your calculator for that if you don't remember, right? 12, and it's not divided by 2, it's square root, because 12 times 12 is 144. That's why it's the answer to that. Then divide by 2, and now we break it apart into our two answers, right? We've simplified it, and we're going to go 10 plus 12 divided by 2, 10 minus 12 divided by 2. 10 plus 12 is 22, divided by 2 is 11. 10 minus 12 is negative 2, divided by 2 is negative 1. So our answers here, the solutions, are x equals 11, or x equals negative 1. And that's that. So hopefully you were able to work through that on your own, and then finding the mistakes you made on problem 5. Now use use problems 4 and 5 as examples for problems 6, 7, and 8. That's going to be all you're doing this week, is just those problems. So really it's just a 5-problem assignment that you're doing on your own. And then next week we'll come back with a little bit more challenging problems with numbers that aren't quite so nice, but you'll have already had some practice with it, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Have a wonderful week. stop in on office hours if you have questions, or email me, that sort of thing. All right, thanks. Have an awesome week.